Hey guys, welcome back to EK TV. I'm delighted to have Alex Mashinsky with us, the founder of the Celsius Network.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, cool. Welcome to London. I think you got in last night. How are you enjoying London Blockchain Week so far?
Love London. You know, it's never probably the best Indian food you can get outside of India, right? So, yeah, I'm here for 4 days, and I'll be running around London with all the different events happening in Blockchain Week. Mm-hmm. And really exciting environment. I think London is thriving on this thing called blockchain. So
yeah,
yes.
Sure. Well, was there any specific events that you're most interested in, like you're most excited about?
So you have several conferences. I'm speaking at 2 of them. Also meeting a bunch of local companies. I'm advising a few, invested in a few, and also investors. We're talking to different investors who are interested in having a piece of the Celsius network.
Right, okay. So Celsius Network is raising capital at the moment? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. So we did an ICO back in March.
Yeah.
We raised a total of 50 million. I think about 32.5 million was the net amount, because we had to give some refunds and we had to do whatever. And we were the hodling type, so we waited probably a little bit too long to sell a chunk of it, but so we want to make sure that we're doing extremely well. We just announced we did $632 million worth of loans in the first 6 months of last year. Wow. Since our launch, so that's probably more than all of our competitors put together. And we generated hundreds of thousands in revenues. Run rate will almost break even, so we will be break even in 2019. So I think it's one of the very few projects out there, ICO projects, that has a working product on schedule or ahead of schedule, has thousands of users. We have no complaints. If you look at the internet, I think we're doing pretty well as far as kind of delivering on what we promised. And the opportunity there is millions of users. So for us right now, it's all about how do we take this basic product we built and expand the community. We promised, our mission was to bring 100 million people into the blockchain, right? And so the fact that we have 17,000, I think, is the count right now of registered users from over 100 countries, by the way. And how do we take that and add a few zeros to it on the back end? So for that, you need capital. And you need to tell the story to 100 times as many people as the people that already know it. But really, it's all about our community. It's about our community going out there and convincing their friends and their family and others that this is the Celsius Network really acting in their best interest. And that's what we're trying to do, which is the opposite of what banks do every day. You know, so it's time to unbank yourself.
Sure. Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. So obviously we're in the, I believe we're in the biggest, longest bear market that we've seen in the crypto space or blockchain space. I'm always interested to us founders like you to see like how you've changed your, like maybe your business practices to adapt to this current climate.
So I was saying, I was here talking this morning at the conference about exactly this issue that there's a disconnect between what's happening day to day on the ground with developers, with users, and what's happening with the price action. So let me first start, maybe explain what's happening with the price action, and then we'll talk about the other part. So if you're familiar, I don't know, were you a relay racer when you were in high school or college? Or
yeah.
Okay, great. So you'll get this analogy better than most. So if you think of Satoshi as the creator of the Bitcoin, Satoshi handed the baton to the first group that kind of jumped on it, and that was all anarchists, right? Unfortunately, the first million people to join the Bitcoin revolution were all guys who wanted to blow up the world using this Bitcoin, right? And they could not get enough users, so they handed off the baton to a bunch of libertarians, right? The libertarians took the baton from the anarchists and said, hey, you want to blow up the world? We want to save the world. And ran around and told everybody how the blockchain and cryptocurrencies and so on are going to save the world. But they only got 3 million users. So they had to hand off the baton to the next group, which were the speculators. And the speculators said, both of you got it wrong. You don't understand. This is all about making money. and we're going to take the Bitcoin from 2,000, we're going to run it to 20,000, and then we're going to hand off the baton to the biggest group, the guys with the deepest pockets, right? The institutions. And the problem is that when they handed off, when they wanted to hand off the baton to the institution said, hey, this thing, we don't understand the regulatory environment. It may be illegal to do what you guys wanted to do. We don't think it's scalable. Solve your scalability issues, then come back to us, right? And they just did not, they dropped the baton, right? So the price action, what you're seeing is an 80% drop in prices is because of that dropping of the baton. At the same time, Bloomberg just published an article in January that the number of people that joined the Bitcoin, right, new wallets joining the Bitcoin in 2018 was more than the previous 10 years put together. So the usage doubled, but the price action is completely uncorrelated. So, and these things happen a lot. Like when you look at the internet, the internet went through exactly the same thing between 2000 and 2003, where the usage continued to go up, but the price action, like Amazon, lost 90-something% of its value. It went from 120-something to $8, right? $125, I think, was the high, down to $8. Right. Now, was Amazon a bad company at $8? No. It's now trading almost at $2,000. So we're going through the same thing. Now, not every company is going to be successful, and it's very hard right now to figure out who is an Amazon and who is just a dead company. But all we got from the internet were 5 great companies, right? After 10,000 companies that tried to create things. We got Google, Facebook, Amazon, and so on. So don't expect more than 5 great companies out of the blockchain, right? And right now we're going through the downturn, but when it recovers, the winners of the blockchain are going to be bigger than the winners of the internet. And the reason for that is that while the internet, we think the internet is everything, the internet really only touched information and travel and so on. The blockchain touches money, all the money in the world, and all the money in the world touches everything. So the blockchain, by definition, will be bigger than the internet.
So do you believe then, I mean, are you a believer that crypto will actually become like used as money, like on a global scale? Or do you think that more the blockchain technology side of things will be integrated into business, or both?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's a big debate going on that. It's not like I have some magic wand and I can see the future, but basically you have a private blockchain, you have a public blockchain. The private blockchain is what we had back in the internet called intranets. And I can tell you that in 93 and 94, everybody thought that it's going to be intranets. AT&T had its own intranet, and General Electric had its own intranet. Yeah. And General Electric ran, I think, 80% of all the emails in the world on their GE net. And everybody was sure that the internet, that the email service is just going to be a paid service provided by General Electric. And obviously, Hotmail came out and everybody else and offered it for free and on the public internet. And overnight, basically, everybody moved from paid service to free service. Today, no one charges you for email. Right? I mean, it's ludicrous to even think about that. So the same thing is happening with the blockchain. Today we have groups of banks and insurance companies and other people who are saying, oh, it's all about private blockchain. Mm-hmm. And you have a group of developers who are saying, no, it's all public blockchain. And the public network, as long as it's based on open standards and based on consensus and so on, will always win against those private guys who are trying to charge fees or just become a different type of a toll collector. So I'm not a believer in intranets. All of my investments are in the public blockchain space. And in there, again, you're going to have a huge winner in the insurance space. You're going to have a huge winner in the money, right? So somebody is going to create digital money. And again, it may be a government, right? It might become the Chinese government or the Singapore government or somebody like that who prints digital money, right? Uses a public blockchain, but becomes the stable coin that everybody recognizes. There are already close to 100 stable coins out there. It's just that they're not issued by any company that everybody can trust. So the race to become that single system that competes with the dollar or competes with the yuan is really the opportunity, right? And it's going to take a bunch of years for us to figure out who's for real and who's not. But I think we're all going to have a digital wallet from which we pay our bills and from which into which we accept deposits and things like that. I mean, the idea that you give your money to a bank and they make all the money on your money, right, is just completely, I think, an old idea and is up for for a reset.
Yeah. Okay. So just going back to that analogy about the baton. So obviously, you said right now, the baton's been dropped while the regulators are trying to work out how to regulate this thing. What's your philosophy on regulation and blockchain? Like, do you believe that the regulation will stifle the creativity, or do you think that we can work hand in hand?
So look, the regulators, obviously, they're not marathon runners, right? I mean, they are usually the slower guys in the room, and countries are competing with each other over regulation. So you're seeing right now, for example, the UK and France competing with each other on this idea of utility token, on this idea of the fact that there's something different than just securities, that there might be security tokens and utility tokens and stable coins, and each one of those is a separate category. So who is going to win the race? I have no idea. I don't think it's going to be Malta or Singapore. I think that the institutions are looking for a much more broad kind of statement from a much bigger financial center like France, like the UK, or the United States. Obviously, the US is the leading financial center of the world, and what the SEC says goes. And I think the US is kind of letting this industry develop before they, I think, hardened the regulation, which is a good thing. And there's a lot of experimentation going on, and we really have to figure out, okay, what are those killer apps before we decide to regulate them. And the analogy to that is that if you look back at the internet days, the United States was actually extremely progressive in not regulating the internet. 95, 96, there were special laws passed not to tax the internet, equal access. So we need the equivalent to those things in our crypto world, right? And what we need there is really things that say, okay, a token is not a security. A token is not a currency. Right? It may represent those things, and in some cases it may have some restrictions on use or who is allowed to touch it or things like that. But we cannot have an environment where every state and every country and every jurisdiction has its own rules, because then you're not going to have mass adoption. And if you don't have mass adoption, then we're not doing it for anything. The reason the internet has eaten every other network that exists, right, is because it became a global standard, and every node on the internet behaves exactly the same way. So as someone who wrote the original patents for voice over IP, built the first VoIP gateway, I can tell you it would never have become successful, and 3 billion people wouldn't have used it unless every device on the network, including your cell phone, could talk to any other device without an intermediary, without a phone company in the middle, right? I mean, when you do a call, you just press on somebody's names and it works. Yeah. So we need the equivalent to that. I always joke, I say we're going from VoIP to MoIP, from voice over IP to money over IP. Yeah. And what you need is be able to click on somebody's image or name and say, I want to send them $20, and it will convert it into some cryptocurrency. And you're not going to even know how it works in the background. If I ask people here at this conference how VoIP works, nobody will be able to explain it to me. They'll say, I press a button and I speak to someone. But there's a lot of complicated stuff that happens on the 7 layers of the internet that allow you to transport and transfer and complete those transactions. So we don't have that yet on the blockchain. It's very complicated. It reminds me again of 94, 95, where you had to type a TCP IP address into the into the system to actually connect to somebody, right? That's what we're doing today. We're typing all these characters to kind of prove to people that we own something on the blockchain.
I did see a project here actually that had a wallet, and you can just send payments to let's say I'm sending you $20 and it just says Alex. You can just click on that and send it. But I think maybe it's not quite as how do we say, sophisticated as the way it needs to be. Maybe I have to add your private key first, public key, sorry, and then send you the money. But
so Celsius, in our wallet, we have a service called CellPay, right, okay, which is the first time you can send any crypto, right? So all the cryptos we support, I think we support 16 different coins right now. You can send it to anyone outside without knowing what their address is. Because the problem is most people, obviously, by definition, don't have a wallet. And even the people who have a wallet, you have to call them and say, hey, do you have Ethereum wallet? Great, send me the address. And then they send you an address, and then you're like, hey, can I send you a test transaction to make sure that you don't lose the money? And then you're like, did you get it? Okay, great. I'm sending you the rest of the money now. Did you get it again? So it's like, it's ridiculous, right? So what Celsius did, it created like similar to Venmo or PayPal. It created a service that allows you to text the other person the value that you want to transfer, and then they basically onboard and create their own account, even if they don't have an account, right? But you send the value first, and then you onboard second. So we reversed the transaction. We took out all the friction, and by doing so, we're inviting people. When there's money waiting for you, you're going to join the blockchain. But when you have all this complexity between you and sending a transaction, you would never create an account just as somebody would send you $10, right? So I think CellPay is trying to reverse that process, and I invite you. I'll send you some money right after this interview. We'll test it out.
Perfect. Okay, so you mentioned that there's 16 tokens on CellPay right now, or on Celsius right now.
Wallet, yeah.
On Celsius right now. Who are you planning on integrating any more tokens, and if so, who would they? Which projects are they?
Sure. So look, we don't. Our job is not to decide which project is great and which project is bad. We have a community. Our community votes every day to tell us what they like, what they don't like, by depositing things. And if we don't support something, they cheer. They wanted Stellar for a long time. We just added Stellar, so it's a great example of the community saying, "Hey, we love this project. How come you don't have it?" Yeah. And we're like, "Sure, we'll add it." I mean, our job is not. Again, if we represent the interest of the community, then we have to do what the community says. Even if they love a project that is crazy, we have to support it, because crazier things have happened in the past. Like if you look at the history of technology, usually it was not the best technology that won. It's a technology that got the first to mass adoption. So, again, I wrote VoIP. I had the first VoIP gateway in 1995 working. I can tell you WhatsApp came, 2009 or something, 2010. So and they got 1.5 billion users in like no time, right? So it's usually not the first guy to create something. It's the guy, by the time it's the 7th guy or the 10th guy, right? Apple wasn't the first smartphone, right? They were the last smartphone. So usually by the time everybody figured out all the problems, the next guy, the last guy comes in and he runs passing everybody because he knows what not to do, right? Yeah. He doesn't have to trailblaze. They can just pick everybody's mistakes and create a product that works best, and they haven't exhausted themselves in turning left and right along the way and into all the dark alleys that you do as an entrepreneur. So I did 7 startups before Celsius. I can tell you it's much fun as it is miserable experience. It's like, when it works, it's great. But when it takes you into dark alleys, it's not so much fun.
Okay, so you mentioned that Celsius Network has the largest amount of loaned out of all of the loaning competitors, should we say, of crypto. How do you ensure then that Celsius Network stays ahead of its competitors? So we do 2 simple things, right? The real value, the reason Celsius is so successful and attractive for the users is because, unlike all of our competitors, we created the network for the depositor. So think about your bank, right? Your bank, you give them your money. They turn around and lend it to me, your money. They lend it to me. They pay you less than 1%, and they charge me 25% on my credit card. So you get 1%, they get 24%. So they get 90% of the value. And no one complained. None of us are screaming at the bank saying, "Hey, you stealing money out of my pocket," right? So all of these new lenders on the blockchain, they're doing exactly what banks do. Right? They lend you money against your crypto, and then they take the profits and they give it to their financial partners, who are mostly banks and financial institutions. So we do the opposite of that. We take the interest and we give it to the community of depositors. We don't give anything to the financial partners. We don't have any financial partners. All of our money comes from our depositors. So now that sounds like a crazy idea, giving 80% of what you create to the people who deposited coins with you. Why would you do that if you can get away with not giving them 90%? Yeah. So, but when you think about it, it's a very simple idea. It's what a bank should do in the first place. So when you're doing it in the best interest of the community, then you say, of course, that's the right thing to do. But when you're doing it in your best interest or in the best interest of your investors, then you would do the opposite.
So it's not like we invented some new thing. We are doing what the community, what the banks should be doing. It's just that they're too greedy and they have to pay for all these big buildings downtown and the airplanes and the fancy meals and all that stuff. And that costs money, and they have to take it from the depositor. You know, they can't really take it from anybody else. So our success has to do with the fact that we're doing good and doing well at the same time. And we're doing good for the community, right? And people understand that. They might understand the beginning, they might not trust you, but on average, our people giving us 5 deposits. They're giving us a little bit of coins, they test us out, then they give us more, then they give us more, and so on. And we just launched 5 stable coins. So now you can deposit USDC, GUSD, PAX, Maker DAI, all of these coins that basically enable you to earn 7.1% interest on your money. That's 7 times more than your bank pays you. So we charge our customers 9%, and we pay 7.1% or 80% of that back to the community.
Okay, so that sounds quite attractive even to me as a retail investor, but that would also sound attractive to me if I was a multimillionaire putting my money in, yes, holding it. So right. Are you seeing like lots of big players putting money in, or is it still more like the individuals that are just putting their $100, $200, $1,000 in? So
we're not. So again, let's go back to the big banks. In the big bank, you have millions of dollars. The bank will give you a special rate. And if you're a small guy, they'll charge you for your checking account. They'll charge you for your credit card. They'll charge you for everything, right? So the little guy who doesn't have anything is paying the fees for the big guy who already has too much money. Here, we try to do the opposite. So we said, okay, first, let's treat everybody equal. Let's not charge any fees. Let's not charge penalties. Let's not charge late fees, right? How can you do that? Because, again, we only can take money out of our the earnings, out of the stuff we charge the borrowers, right? So you come, you get a loan, you pay interest. That interest is supposed to pay for all of our costs and for everybody in the community. And we treat $1 million guy and a $10 guy exactly the same way. Now, they're not getting the same, they're getting pro rata the same, but obviously the $1 million guy is going to get more than the $10 guy. So now, and we do penalize you if you don't hold, like we give you basically, our token is called the cell token. And the more you hodl the cell token, the more of the interest you're going to get. So if the $1 million guy takes our cell token, immediately sells it in the market, he will be penalized compared to the $10 guy who kept all the cell tokens. So in pro rata terms, you're actually going to earn more than the $1 million guy, right? Okay. So we basically incentivizing hodling and disincentivizing speculation. Because our community, the entire crypto community, can only scale if we all work together. Right? If we all huddle up together and replace the bank with a community that works in our best interest, and we're big enough, if we have hundreds of thousands of users or millions of users, then we can scale and we can be bigger than any bank. Because, you know, it's funny, but most people tell me, Alex, how are you going to take on the banks? They're so big and powerful. And I'm like, how do you think they became big and powerful? It's because us giving them deposits every day. You stop giving them deposits and you see them selling those buildings in a hurry. Because their entire business is relying on taking that 90% from you and me. You take that out of the way and they have no profit, right? They cannot sustain themselves without that 90% margin. So all we have to do is convince people that this is stable, this is acting in their best interest, and that it's sustainable. And they will stop depositing money with banks and will start depositing money with companies like Celsius.
Okay, so what do you think then has been the biggest challenge for Celsius? I mean, I'm sure you've had a ton of challenges, but like especially potentially maybe the older market, which have maybe got more access to capital, that they might not necessarily trust in crypto. Obviously, they just read these scam headlines all the time. So I guess that must have been a challenge. But yeah, could you share with us what those challenges, or maybe how those challenges have changed from when you guys ICO'd compared to like today?
Yes. So look. The good news is I'm already a millionaire, multimillionaire, and so I have 6 kids at home. So I'm definitely not the guy who's going to skip town, buy a Lambo, and drive all over Brazil and send photos of yourself laughing and smiling at how you stole everybody's money, right? So yes, there are bad projects. Yes, people took money and misused it. Yes, people pretend to be dead with other people's money. But there are a few projects that actually are trying to do something for the community. Okay, so if you don't know who I am, I'm the guy who went and fought all the phone companies in the world and gave you something for free that you used to pay $3 a minute. Okay? How many people gave me less than 1% chance of winning that battle against back in 94, 95, AT&T was the most profitable and powerful company in the world. And I went head to head with them. Then 10, 15 years later, I went head to head with them again. I wanted to bring wireless connectivity and Wi-Fi to the subways in New York. It's the largest underground system in the world. It did not have any wireless connectivity. You went to the tube and there was no signal. And I was like, this is crazy, right? And I went to the city and I said, let's give 5 bars to everybody in the subway. Yeah. And they're like, no, the carriers don't want to do it. It's like gym membership. If you don't use it, it's great. The guys who provide the service love the fact that you're spending hours underground and you're not using their service. So it took 10 years and it took a lot of persuading and $300 million to build that network. And today, 8 million people in New York City are using that service for free every day. So I've done it twice already, right? I went out and built something for the people that they're getting for free, okay? And I'm saying again, let's do it again. Just this time, we are fighting with Godzilla, not just a little, this is not a little fight. The banks are the most powerful and politically connected institutions on the planet. They basically write the laws. And they don't write the laws in your best interest, Mr. Depositor. So the only way to solve that is not through voting once every 4 years or whatever it is. The best way to solve that is to build an alternate system in which the system acts in your best interest. And Satoshi already did that. We don't have to do it. Satoshi already created just the right incentives for everybody in a decentralized system that has consensus, that is acting in your best interest on a distributed ledger that is really fail-proof. Okay, we spent 10 years proving that it's fail-proof. Now you, the depositor, all you have to do is test it out. Now I'm not telling you go and take all your money and move it over. Take $10 and try the service out. Go talk to the rest of the community. See if everybody's getting what they were promised. And then ask yourself, should I continue feeding the banks or should I do something in my own best interest? Should I give my family a financial future by actually having a return on my capital, right? The rich guys know how to do it. I know how to do it. I know how to generate 10, 15% on my money. But the average Joe doesn't. They don't have a PhD in economics, right? And figured out all the different ways. So that's the opportunity. And I'm doing that because I can. I don't need to. I don't need the job. It's not like I tried retirement. It didn't work very well for me. I don't have an off switch. So the opportunity here is really to take the community and create something that will outlast me and you and our children, hopefully, and we'll build something that acts in their best interest.
Perfect. So obviously we saw a huge, crazy rise of mania, ICO mania in 2017, 2018. Do you think that we're going to see a similar mania with STOs, or do you think it's going to be more kind of a considered approach?
Is that a trick question or? So I think the ICOs took all the air out of the balloon, and really the STOs are not going to have an opportunity to do the same kind of run that the ICOs had. So if you think about a security token as what does it do, right? It takes a security that normally is reserved for rich people or people that have means, and it says we're going to tokenize it and make it available to the average Joe, right? You want to put $10 into something, you can't afford to buy the Apple share for 170. Guess what? We'll get you $10 out of that, right? Or whatever else the security is. So, and again, these services are good and they're valuable for the average person who doesn't have access to the system. But in most cases, these assets, the Apple or the Google stock or the Microsoft stock, are already fully valued. So your chance of making 10 times your money because you got in on Facebook before it went public are just not there. So the assets that are going to be printed using security tokens, unfortunately, are not going to be the quality assets in the beginning. So I'm a skeptic of the short-term ability of security tokens to really create another wave or the wave necessary to bring Ethereum or Bitcoin or anything else back to its heights. And the opposite of that is the the stable coins. So in my view, the stable coins are a great application. They are a killer app, especially for Ethereum. Most of them are created on the ERC20 standard. So, and they are big enough from a monetary standpoint, from an economic activity standpoint, to really take Ethereum from the level that the ICO brought it to and take it another level higher and maybe bring the price of Ethereum back to that $700 to $800 range. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of economic activity that is not possible using traditional money wiring and working banking hours. You know, it's an expression, right, for a reason. So we don't do martinis anymore, but the lunch martinis, but I think the bankers are still taking the same breaks as they used to do back then. So here you have a fungible asset that is tradable 24/7 that could be put into a variety of smart contracts and really speed up transaction and enable a lot of things that banks will just never be able to do. And that's the opportunity. And if you do all of that on an ERC20, automatically Ethereum benefits. And if Ethereum benefits, the price of the ETH goes up. And if the price of the ETH goes up, it will lift the entire crypto community with it. So that's my prediction. That's why Celsius is supporting 5 stable coins. And I think if the community tells us they want to support another 10, we will add another 10.
Okay, and just a random question. How have you found, working with the Ethereum blockchain? Is it scalable? Are you guys thinking of, like, implementing a second layer scaling solution? Should Celsius Network eventually hit mainstream adoption?
Yeah, so a lot of people are worried about speed and so on. And again, it's not that some of the other networks are 10,000 times faster, right? I mean, if you're faster, that means you sacrificed the consensus, right? And you're much more centralized. So if you're much more centralized, then are you really providing decentralization? So the question is just, where is that volume bar? Just like you have 1 to 0 and you don't want to listen to music at 10, but you don't want also to listen to it at 0. The question is, one person likes it at 3, my parents, and I like it kind of more at 7 or 8, right? So right now Ethereum is more at like 3. It's too safe. It's too slow. And I think part of the efforts that the Ethereum community is doing with sharding and with Plasma and with all the other efforts is really moving that bar from 3 to 7, keeping it still safe enough and decentralized enough, but giving enough speed to enable all of the stuff to happen on the blockchain. But it's rare to see congestion on the Ethereum network. So with all of this talk of this and that, many blocks go unfilled. So when you see that, you realize that really we don't have the congestion and if you skip a block or two, what's the big deal? So for most application, immediate finality is not necessary. And it's just a question of us figuring out first what the killers app are and then kind of adjusting the protocols to adopt them. I wrote a Medium article about this, DApp or FAT protocol, right? And I'm a big believer that the DApps are going to be driving the protocol, not the other way. And I wrote enough protocols to be an expert in the space, right? I have over 50 patents to my name. So I think I'm talking about it from understanding protocols, not from just having an opinion. Yeah. And right now we don't have enough dApps influencing the protocols. And that's why we have over 200 different protocols right now for the blockchain, right? And everybody's saying, oh, mine is faster, mine is better, mine is cuter, mine is oranger. That's not what we need. What we need is a few that do an exceptional job, just like the backbone of the internet running on TCP/IP is doing an exceptional job for hundreds and hundreds or thousands of different dApps that are running on top of those protocols.
Mm-hmm. So within the next 6 to 12 months, is there anything that's particularly exciting to you right now? Like, could it be, could it be a second layer scaling solution? Could it be the fact that you're backed on Fidelity, especially bringing institutional money in? Like, what's most exciting to you in the short term?
Well, backed in Fidelity, picking the baton and finishing the race would be great. I think, I don't know if the race is over. We have to check to see if we ran out of time. But if there is enough time, just joking. I think we have to finish this race, and finishing the race means that all of the parties, right, the the kind of the whitehead anarchists, the libertarians, the speculators, and the institution all work together to lift the asset value and create real economic activity around these protocols, right? That's the only way to make this viable. And unless we do that, then no one benefits. This is kind of a zero-sum game where we either all win together or one of us is left holding a worthless baton, right? So I think there's a lot of ingredients that we need to deliver on. Again, the dApps, the protocols, the scalability, the security, the regulatory issues, right? The institutions coming in, and mass adoption. So even if we did all of that stuff and we only have 10 million users or 20 million users or even 100 million users, that is just not enough to move all the money in the world from using what we use today to move to the blockchain. So in today's world, I would say that the critical mass for this type of application is around the 500 million user base, right? And unfortunately, again, Celsius is all about the developing world, is all about the unbanked or the underbanked, but we have to start this in the developed world. We have to get enough critical mass and prove that it works. And if you have enough value proposition and enough of an income from the guys that have the money, then you can go and offer that service to the people that don't have any money, right? Because the guys in Africa or the guys in Asia that live on $10 a day cannot subsidize the service for the millionaires and the billionaires. So we announced, for example, a partnership with the United Nations where we'll be taking dollars from rich people as donations in cryptocurrencies and helping the UN and the SDG projects deploy that into the developing countries. So that's one way where we're bridging the gap between the two and trying to really both create not just the fungibility of these assets, but also track them and see who's actually using them at the end. Are 80 cents on the dollar going to the guys who throw parties and drive themselves in limos, or are they actually reaching the farmer in Africa or the small business entrepreneur in India or whatever? So we all have the same dreams. We all have the same aspirations for the stuff. What's not clear is what's the path. How do you get there from where we are today? Because most of the projects, most of the things that have been tried to date, nonprofits and all this other activities, this idea that we will accumulate wealth our entire life, and then in the last 10 years of my life, I will give everything back to the people in form of a nonprofit donations, is just a silly idea. Okay, so we need to reinvent the nonprofit institution with something where we're creating a network that acts in the best interest of its community. As an example, Ethereum created more millionaires than any company in history. Any public company in history. Why? Because everybody who joined Ethereum by definition was not a Wall Street billionaire or a banker or whatever. These were miners and early adopters who came in and said, I believe in this idea. I believe in creating something for the people that's completely separate. And we lifted the value. And every day, the entire community votes on the price of Ethereum. It votes, is the price going up because we're all cheery and we all believe in it? Or is the price going down because we're all running away from this thing and it's at the end of the world, right? So the price represents our trust in the community, right? Which is very, very different than how the dollar or the yen or gold is priced in the real world, right? So here, your value is determined by your contribution to the community. Vitalik's contribution to the community, the miner's contribution to the community versus how much profit did you generate for this or that company, and your boss have to give you a bonus or whatever in dollar terms, right? So it's a completely different way of thinking. And most people on this planet just don't have that. It's very hard for them to go from, what do you mean? I have to go and work real hard in a job I really hate, get a paycheck, deposit it with the bank, have them take 90% of the stuff out from me, and then pay taxes on whatever is left over, right? I mean, no. That was yesterday. Yeah. Tomorrow looks very different. So I live in the future. I love it in the future. I hope everybody's going to join me there. And if I'm there all by myself, I'd rather die there than die in the world where we live in today, where we don't get the chance to be who we need to be.
I think that's a great line to end the interview with. That was fascinating. Thank you, Alex, for joining us so much. So yeah, guys, check out Celsius Network.
We're on Telegram, Celsius Network, on Twitter, Celsius Network, www.celsius.network, or just go to Android or the Apple Store and download the app, Celsius Network. Try it out, send some CellPay to your friends, earn some interest, and unbank yourself.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's EAK TV. Please make sure you subscribe below, and we'll catch you later. Thank you.